You are tuned into the Power Chord Hour right here on 107.9 WRFA, as well as the Power Chord Hour podcast. Or if you're watching us on YouTube, however you're checking this one out, thank you for checking it out. I'm your host, Anthony Merchant, here with you today, and we have another one for you. I am joined today by Shannon, the vocalist of Ohio punk band Bandages. They just actually, maybe a week or so, I want to say, before recording this, just put out their latest single, Perfect Hit, that is out now everywhere, and a couple other singles out lately too. So we'll get into some new music. We'll talk about the band, and fairly new band for me, discovered about a month and a half, 2 months ago. So excited to talk to Shannon and get more into Bandages. Shannon, how are you?
I am good. I'm stoked to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. It's been fun getting into the band. And like I said, I mean, you're new to me, but also you're still a fairly new band as well. Like when did Bandages form? How long have you been a band so far?
We are piping hot and fresh. We started in July of last year.
Oh,
so
geez.
our first show was actually November last year. So we have not even come up on our first show anniversary yet. But we have, packed talent in the band. All of us have been in previous bands, touring bands, signed bands. So, yeah, this was kind of a fun project to come together and kind of, fuck it. We don't care what we sound like. We're going to play what we like. And we were not expecting to get the response that we've received, which is a lot of people like that.
That's a nice way to start things.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not a bad way to get the ball rolling. Like with the sound of, with the band, I'm always kind of interested in that. Like, did you have any idea of what you wanted Bandages to sound like beforehand? Or was this more of like that sound just comes out of you going in and all of you kind of playing together? And that was kind of the, Bandages sound. I mean, I guess like how much of it were you thinking about prior to
like when I say there was absolutely no direction, like really there wasn't. Brandon, our guitarist, is kind of the songwriter, the melody writer behind all of it. He had a lot of stuff saved up that he'd been working on for years. And then Wade, so me and Wade worked together. I was 19 years old, and we worked at Guitar Center together.
Nice.
As young punk rock kids. And I had been in a band called The Messengers. We were, a touring band. We were signed to Punk Core Records. Like it was, fairly decent sized band. And then, things happen. I got into a relationship. I'd been in a relationship for a long time and then basically went through a divorce, and he knew I was moving back to Cincinnati. And he was like, he was in 500 miles to Memphis. They were kind of breaking up, calling it a day. And so he would, reached out to me and he's like, hey, I know you're going through a lot. Would you like to do music? And I was like, heck yeah, let's do music. So it's kind of just been this, creative dump for all of us, that we've all been in other bands. And now we're kind of just, taking the reins on this band and doing what we like. We're playing what we like. If it's weird, that's awesome. If it's pop punk, that's awesome. Like literally nothing's off the table. We'll go through, different songs at practice, and sometimes it's weird and it hits and we love it and we go forward with it. And, it's just kind of been all over the place. And I'm really excited for the record to come out because I feel like it is a little bit all over the place. And I like that. It's, really unique and really good in my opinion. So
how soon you were talking earlier, I mean, you're playing shows. I mean, geez, yeah, you've been a band not super long and it hasn't even been a year since your first show. How soon after forming were you writing songs? How soon did that kind of come into play? Was that pretty instant?
Oh, the first practice I went to with them, there was already, I would say 3 to 5 songs.
Oh, geez.
That Brandon had already had in his back pocket and been, writing for years. And, he's done other projects and things like that, but these were kind of things that he was, saving or sitting on. And yeah, so we hit the ground running. In prior bands, it seemed like songwriting was very much an uphill battle, like writing the riffs, writing the lyrics, writing melodies. And a lot of times with us, it just kind of dumps and it comes out. And then we're like, okay, let's go. Let's take it. It just doesn't seem to be, there's very little creative blocks. And I think it's because we are not trying for any sound. We're just experimenting with what comes out and running with it. And if it works, it works.
Do you think that comes at all from like being in previous bands? Cause like, I don't know, like sometimes when you start a band, it's not that way. It's not, everybody's very precious with their ideas, or you want to be a certain sound. So, I mean, do you think that comes from kind of past experience from all of you, where it's like none of this isn't your first rodeo for any of you by the sounds of it? I mean,
Yeah.
do you think that's why all this is kind of working so kind of
Yeah,
late?
absolutely. I think that we all, we can all pull from prior experiences or prior songwriting experiences or prior melodies or prior beats or whatever, and kind of fill in what's going to work, in certain songs or certain, parts in the song. We are all also gigantic music nerds. Like, I don't know that I've been with a group of people that is as nerdy about music. We'll have an entire practice talking about Rush. We'll have an entire practice talking about obscure metal that our drummer is into. We're just into music. And it's kind of been cool to not have a band with any gatekeeping whatsoever. Like, three of us are in our 40s. Our drummer is the only one still in his 30s. So we're over the gatekeeping. We're over the image. We're over what is supposed to be cool or what we're supposed to sound like. And that gives you a lot of freedom. And you can pull from bands that you wouldn't have, maybe earlier. I was in a street punk band. So obviously talking about Electric Light Orchestra and a street punk band probably isn't relevant. But, in a band where you're allowed to do whatever you want or bring any idea to the table, like it's been really cool. We can just nerd out. And it's fun, and it's been really awesome.
For like influences, and I mean, I know it varies from band member to band member, but are there any, like, would you say there's any of those like commonalities in there where you're like, that's where all of you just automatically like click on or go, yes, like that's where we derive influence? Like, do any pop out? I mean, I realize sometimes I ask that, and I know it's different from a band member, but are there any of those like common ones for all of you?
I mean, I think it's been anything. Like, Typo Negative gets talked about a lot. Oddly, we sound nothing like Typo Negative. Green Day, we talk about Green Day a lot. And just, and again, for a band prior that would have been, more street punk or more, hardcore punk, like, you would never say that. You'd never say like, oh my God, Green Day's songwriting is absolutely incredible. But when you go back to the first two albums, like, you can't deny that. Nobody can deny that. They're just impeccably written albums. So things like that, just like kind of the common thread of bands, things that we pulled from, being young, like we had, Joe Gittleman on The Perfect Hit, like Mighty Mighty Bosstones hit for all of us. We all were kind of that age when, the third wave kind of took over. So we've all had a nerdy ska period. I still love the Specials. They're still one of my favorite bands, and so, we're just kind of unapologetically into what we're into. And there are some common threads, and then we've all kind of introduced each other to other things as well. A huge influential band to me is the Avengers, and Penelope Houston. And, I don't think other members of the band were that hip to it, but we all are kind of always sharing ideas and exploring new outlets and, kind of nerding out over ones that we all share.
Nice. I was going to ask you too. You just mentioned with Joe Gittleman on the new single. How did that collaboration come about? How did all of that happen?
So we have a very good friend here named Sammy K. I don't know if you're familiar with Sammy's work. Yeah. So Sammy just started a project called The Kilograms. And if you have not checked them out, they're absolutely incredible. But Joe is a part of that project. So it's Sammy and Joe. Our friend Jay, who also has a band called the Newport Secret Six out of, Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky. And they're incredible. I know they have some big shows planned coming up. So if you see the Kilograms locally, it's a good show, great band.
Right, very nice. I know this single's leading up to a new album. You've released a couple other singles this year, right? How many singles have you kind of released more recently?
So this is the fourth. This is the fourth one. We started back in, I believe, June, and yeah, kind of trickled, singles. They kept calling it a drip campaign, which makes me like, bleh. It's like. I hate the name of it. I'm like, can we just call it anything else but that? I hate it. So we've had 4 singles. This is the fourth one. And then the album is out December 20th, I know, is the vinyl. I need to look at the other date for the digital. They literally just sent it to me today and they're like, remember it. And I'm like, I won't remember it, but
we'll be out soon.
Soon, December. Yeah. And we will have a release show on the 20th with the vinyl.
Oh,
so,
very.
Yeah.
What does the down in your neck of the woods, like what does the local scene kind of look like for Bandages, like in terms of other punk bands to play with, venues to play at? Like what's that looking like? I mean, for being as early on, obviously you've played some shows, so there are places, but what's that scene kind of look like?
Cincinnati has an absolutely incredible music scene. I was away from the city for about 13 years. I lived in Indianapolis and then lived on a farm like outside of the city. So I kind of like came back into the Cincinnati music scene after being out of it for a lot of years. And you can literally go see a live punk, metal, hardcore band almost every night of the week here somewhere. I feel bad because I don't get out as much as I would like to in the scene and see some of the bands coming up, but it's incredible. And the other thing I've been floored by, and I'm seeing this all over, not just Cincinnati, is just the amount of women that are involved. It's when I was in the Messengers years ago, we were billed as female-fronted punk, female-fronted punk. And like, that's not a thing anymore. It's just every band has a woman in it, seemingly doing some part, drumming, guitar, bass, whatever. And that's just been really cool and really refreshing to see. But yeah, Cincinnati, ton of venues, ton of, people that are doing independent stuff. We have a skate park venue now, which is freaking awesome indoors. Yeah, it's called The Pit. Yeah. It's like playing an 80s movie. Like, it's amazing.
You sold me already.
Yeah, right. We have some incredible places. Southgate House has been just so nice to us, and just so welcoming. That was our first show at Iron Fest. Iron Fest is incredible. It's a 2-day music festival it's $5. Like that's the whole thing. It's $5 to get in. It's in memorial of a local Cincinnati musician who passed away. So this festival, is thrown for them. And it's just awesome. You can go on one story of the Southgate House. It's 2 stories with 3 venues. And you can see hardcore, and then you can go to the next room and it's an electronic art band. And then you can go upstairs and it's punk. Like, it's very cool. It's a very cool festival.
Yeah, it does sound like you have quite a vibrant scene there.
Yeah, very vibrant.
And then also, like, if I'm thinking correctly, right, I mean, you're right on that, like, Kentucky border, and not right? It's almost like tri-state. It's been a while since I've been down there, but you're not far from Indiana either, right? There's kind of a little tri-state going there.
We get little corners, yeah.
So I was going to say, I swear they're all, like, right next to each other. So you kind of, I'm sure, have that, too, where, all of them kind of, or I would assume kind of integrate a little, where it's like, go across here, play Kentucky today, and then go back and play Ohio tomorrow, kind of,
Absolutely. And, a lot of times, like in the cities in the Midwest, we have good relationships, like the Melody Inn in Indianapolis that's still doing like punk rock night up there. Like Rich and the crew that runs that is just, they're absolutely awesome people. So like in the Midwest, you got to stick together. We're not the East Coast. We're not big, West out there. So we got to know each other and watch each other's backs.
Were you a part of the local music scene when you were in Indianapolis? Like, did you kind of like
not as much as I would like to be? No, not as much as I would like to be. Just based on some life things that happened at the time, but getting back into it kind of now a little bit later. So
very nice, very nice. Getting into the the new album coming up. Where was that recorded?
So Ryan Malott from 500 Miles to Memphis. Yeah, he recorded it for us. Yeah, he's been on the show previously. He said he had a great time. So that's great feedback. He recorded part of it in our practice space in Dayton. And then he finished it out in his basement studio. So yeah, we owe Ryan so much for this because he heard us live. We sent a few songs to him. And I think his exact words to Wade, because they're very close. His exact words to Wade, our bassist, was, "I didn't know you guys were good." They're that good. So he ended up stepping in and recording a bunch for us. And I mean, we owe him the world for this recording. Honestly, he's just helped us out a ton.
How long was the kind of recording process for this? Was it just kind of like one of the things where it's like on and off, work on it a little bit, put it down, work on it a little later? Or was it kind of all done?
No, it was about as any time. And this is again, being full grown adults in a punk band. It's like, you got to work around kids' soccer schedules and work schedules and being out of town and family vacations. And so with all that aside, honestly, we got it all knocked out fairly quickly. I think we started recording it around April. And then we wrapped it up about a month ago.
That's not so bad. I was wondering that part too, because like with releasing the singles for a while, I'm like, is this one of the ones where you have to like then sit on it? Like you record it, it's all ready to go, and then it's like, oh, you're just
literally
release.
We had two songs. We had a song that was going to be on the album. Excuse my dog back there. He's adorable. We had a song that was, gonna be on the album. And then like literally Brandon was like, hey, I wrote this other song. And we were like, well, let's run through it. And then Ryan was like, no, that song needs to be on the album. And that was American Arrogance. So that's one of the singles that were released. So literally like when we were in the studio, like we were writing, songs that ended up being, on the record. So
do you have, assuming you're still writing, it sounds like you probably have more, is there more material that's been written that didn't make it on this or you're still sitting on? Because it sounds like the band's writing quite a bit.
Absolutely. It's gangbusters. Yeah. It's just like Brandon is like a songwriting machine. It's really incredible.
Do you, with playing shows locally and stuff, do you think that is touring something you guys kind of thought about or think you'll do? I mean, I know you said like you have jobs and obligations and things.
We absolutely want to. Like, we absolutely would love to. And again, like, I'm hoping it's different than it was when I was 19. But it's probably not. But we definitely want to do like some regional stuff around here if we can hit, Cleveland, Detroit, Indy, Fort Wayne, Louisville, those kind of things. Like we're absolutely, looking to do that. I think we're trying to set something up for the spring. And if it ends up being something larger, like I think we're all on board to do it. So yeah.
Do you kind of going to with like the songwriting, everything? Do you feel like you found like that, still being so new? Do you feel like where you're at with how the band writes songs is kind of like a nice, all right, this is probably the pocket will, I don't know, stay in, but like this is what we're going to keep trying? Or do you feel like you're still experimenting with that at all? Or do you feel like you've kind of already found that?
I think we're still experimenting too. Like, I think Brandon has finally like come into where my vocal range actually is and like where I can be really powerful. My previous band hadn't played in years. And we actually ended up playing a show last year, just like as a one-off, and Bandages actually got to see the Messengers, which is kind of fun and weird, but I think Brandon saw like vocally, where my kind of power is. And now we can kind of shift songs and write kind of in those ranges as well. So yeah, I think it's going to keep adapting, but I don't think we're going to be a band that has a sound, if that makes any sense,
Yeah. Not being, again, it goes and it's working so far for the band. Cause again, I mean, if you're going in without, we have to sound like this, or we have to do this. It's
and I say this a lot, like female fronted bands, you get pigeonholed. You get off stage and people are like, oh, you sound just like Brody, or oh, you sound just like Polystyrene, or oh, you just, and the thing is, I don't think I sound like any of those, like, but you tend to get thrown into these groups because it's, there's still a little bit of the novelty of a female fronted punk band. So I kind of think it's important to keep adapting our sound and to not sound like anybody else.
Yeah, do what you want to do. Sound like Bandages. Just sound like
exactly.
Outside of music, I mean, do you have any other creative outlets, or is this kind of where all your creative energy goes?
For me, this is my creative outlet. Like music has been my creative outlet. I'm also a part-time motorcycle mechanic.
Ooh. Nice.
So I do have like project bikes that I work on, kind of a different, outlet with that as well, being creative and seeing what you can do with motorcycles. And if you want to do like a project bike, make it a cafe race or something like that. Like I do that as well. I should say I'm a retired motorcycle mechanic. I did do it as a job.
That's
I
awesome.
just don't anymore. I do ride motorcycles a lot still, but that's not really on the creative side as much, but yeah.
Is that a different kind of, because I'm sure there is in kind of working on that stuff. Is there anything similar to the creativity in music, or is that like so left? Like, is that so drastically different from playing?
There's so much crossover in the people. You
Really?
know what I mean? Like, like when you go out and you go to these like motorcycle events, like you see people that you're like, oh, they were in that band or this, you know what I mean? Like it's just a big crossover in this community, So yeah, I mean, there in that aspect, there are definitely, but yeah, just it's different kind of, visual versus hearing and creating music,
What songs, for people, I guess people listening right now have heard a few of your songs, a few are still,
I hope so.
Maybe there's also some you've only probably heard if they've seen you live, but what have been the most fun ones to play live so far off the upcoming album? What ones kind of,
so we've released Replace as our first single, and that was literally because the feedback we got live. People love that song live. Yeah, and I think it's because at the end, like I'm screaming so much I'm about to pass out, but I feel like live that song is really electrified. And then as a band, you're always going to like the songs that probably aren't going to be as popular. I always find that as like, you get pet songs that you just really love, that might not be the popular song, but I still love Ghost Product. The minute kind of Brandon played that riff and the idea, I was like, oh my God. And then it was in my head for weeks. And we did a video to that one's on YouTube as well. And it's just a really catchy song. The messaging behind it is really cool. And it's a song I'm really proud of. Like, I really enjoy that one.
I'm kind of interested in this with a band, Bandages and your previous bands. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell when a song's gonna work live? Like, can you tell prior? Is that one of those things where you're not gonna know what ones are gonna be the fan favorites or what's gonna work live until you go play those in front of an audience?
So what's weird is like in our development of like writing songs, I'll say like Brandon is kind of the powerhouse and like writing the melodies and coming up with stuff, but we will come in and practice it and start writing it, and then it just becomes like kind of a moving, developing, breathing child, and we all kind of add our points to it. We've had songs that we're going to be on kind of the scrap floor, like it's not anything amazing, and then it was like, oh, put this guitar line in it, oh, what if I go high with vocals here, what if, and all of a sudden we're like, oh, this is a banger, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. So I feel like we do have that evolution of some songs. And like I said, like the songs that I like to perform live, hopefully it comes across that I'm way into them, but yeah, I feel like there's always going to be, I think everybody's always going to have a favorite, even if it's not everybody's favorite, but yeah, I will say sometimes we know right away it's going to be awesome, and sometimes we got to put a little bit of elbow grease into it.
No, it sounds like it's a solid debut by the sounds of it. The singles so far have been good. It seems like it's
Thank you.
And again, I like that. Yeah, it sounds like it's very low pressure starting this band. I mean, it doesn't.
Super. I always make the joke, I have never been in a band where everybody is people pleasers, but every one of us is a people pleaser. So like making decisions is awful. But the creative process is amazing because nobody will say no. So we'll try it. We're like, yeah, let's try it, whatever. But yeah, we are about as democratic as a band possibly could be. Nobody really gets bent out of shape. Everybody is super open to feedback. Like it's a super cool, positive band and just with cool people. And yeah, it's awesome.
With the leading up to this, I mean, again, this will be out probably a couple weeks before the album is actually out. But like, I guess, what are you most looking forward to? A few songs are out, but what are you most looking forward to, I guess, getting the debut out, getting this first record out? What are you kind of looking most forward to people hearing this?
I mean, this is like my joke. I was like, I really don't care about anything but having this on vinyl.
Nice.
I was like, I just want to hold the record, in my hands and that's it. And that's kind of like, we're stoked that people like it. We are just fucking blown away that people have been like, oh, you guys are great. And, live, they're like, you're amazing. And I'm not trying to be like, toot my own horn, but I mean, this is kind of what it's about. So we've just been floored with the support and the amount that people have like come out to us and said like, this is really good stuff. So that's all I want. That's all I ask for is people enjoy it. People come to the shows and maybe we book more shows and play out of town and those people love it. That's all we want out of this. Like we're not, like I said, like there's such a weird thing about doing this at a much older age, right? I say this all the time, like when we're writing, when I was a young like punk rock kid, we could write about you fuck the system and we hate corporations, we hate money. But, now that I'm in my 40s, like I've experienced that. Like I work full time. Like I know what like capitalism and working under capitalism feels like. Whereas like when you're a kid, you're still partying and you'll work and that kind of thing. But like now I really understand what it's like to have access to healthcare. I understand what it's like to see a friend go bankrupt because they can't pay for cancer treatment. Like you really see these causes develop as an adult. And it gives you so much of more of a platform. A lot of our songs are politically driven. That's I'm circling back around a very, very broad way. So you actually have these life experiences now where you're like, you know what? I have some education behind this. It's not just me screaming as a kid because I think I understand, what, and I'm not discounting any of that. There's tons of intelligent music coming out from teenagers and people in their 20s. But when you've lived this life experience and now you're like, I understand what this is. I understand what addiction is. I understand that it can destroy somebody and destroy their family and destroy, everything about them. I understand what not having access to healthcare, what having a transgender child in the Midwest. You know what I mean? I understand seeing this red wave encroach in on our lives of, conservatism and Trump supporters and what that looks like, for real when you're trying to go to work every day with these people and you know that they don't support your kid or they don't support your life choices or, and you look like an enemy. Creating an album with that much experience, like that's another thing I want people to know and understand and to get out there. Like these are real causes that affect people every day. And you have to do something. Like you have to have a voice. Even when I wasn't, in music for a little bit, I've still tried to stay very active in politics and especially supporting, friends in the gay community or, Black Lives Matter or those kind of things. Like, this stuff is important. And it was really important for us to have an album that kind of brought all that stuff up too. So yeah, that's my long-winded coming back to, what we want people to know is, there is some causes in this record and there's some stuff that we want to say. And we're saying it now as adults that have lived these life experiences and have had, some of this stuff happen to us. And it's just a different take on it from when I was 20, Yeah.
No, that's honestly, that's an interesting, I don't know that I've thought about it that way, but that like, even if you're kind of writing about similar things that you did back then, it's like that you're almost, I don't know, justified, vindicated in the way of you've been through the other side. And you're like, oh yeah, no, I still believe, you know what I mean? Like I can definitely vouch.
We've been through divorces. Like we've been through, there's like, everybody has trauma. Like as an adult, I didn't realize, everybody's been traumatized by a situation. Everybody is carrying this stuff every day, and just how important, mental health is and how important that is to start early and to realize some of this stuff and to process some of this stuff. And, it's like all of a sudden you wake up and you're in your 40s and you're like, holy shit, my mental health is not great, or I've been working this career that I'm miserable. Like my life sucks, or whatever. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff that rock stars don't talk about because they're irrelevant by the time,
Well, the other interesting thing, I mean, like going off that, where it's like, having I almost, now you have the experience talk about that stuff, but also going back to like doing what you're doing now, and then also what you've done in the past with music. Are there some ways where you can almost look back at maybe hurdles or difficulties you had in other bands where like now you can almost appreciate more? You go, we're not looking for a specific sound. We're not pigeonholed in this. Like,
Yeah.
that thing where you're like, all those things where you may have before looked back and you're like, well, shit, it sucks that this had to go this way. And maybe you still think that way, but at least now you can go, you know what? It makes it that much sweeter now, or it makes me realize now what actually matters, doing the band and stuff.
Yeah, there was so much stuff that I did like younger, like, I can tell a story. Like, we played an Oi festival in my old band, and I played a really good set, and I got off stage and a guy, literally was like, "Oh, you have dick sucking lips." That's what he said when I got off. Yeah, right. And that shit was not uncommon because there was nothing stopping that. It was a woman in a very male dominated, field. And I said for years that the punk scene was not a safe space for women, and got a lot of shit for saying that, like, later after the fact, and then you have this stuff come out about like Anti-Flag and, the Casualties had stuff with them. Like, I was like, it wasn't a safe space. Like, they were pretending it was a safe space. Yeah. And there were things that I did in the band. Like, I wore next to nothing on stage. I wore mini skirts and fishnets because I thought that's what you had to do. And, looking back, I'm like, why didn't I just go out in jeans and a t-shirt like any dude would have done on stage, So yeah, I mean, there's things now that I'm like, I'm not going to do that. And now if somebody says something like that to us or any other band that has a female in it, or woman or woman presenting person, you have allies now in the scene, and it's a lot more prevalent than it was then, because it just felt very male dominated then. And, you felt like you just had to play the game kind of in a way before you would get taken seriously. But yeah, so yeah, there's a lot of things that are different this time around, and being able to like, launch stuff that's just about the music and just about the messaging.
No, I love to see where it's going so far. I mean, you have quite a bit of momentum for, again, being such a new, like, I knew you were a new band, but I don't even know that I realized how new you actually were.
Very new. Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes I talk to people, like, you guys seem like a new band, and it's like, well, we've been together for like 5 or 6 years, and that's not really the case with Bandages. This is very, very
we are new. Fresh, very fresh.
Well, I mean, obviously the album probably being like the biggest, we got a couple of months left here in 2024. Obviously the album being probably the biggest, but what else does the year look like for Bandages? What does the rest of this year look like?
So we have a bunch of shows coming up. We are doing Iron Fest, and then we are doing a Sad Cowboy celebration. I think that's November 16th or 17th, whatever that Saturday is. And so that'll be a bunch of bands that have been supported by Ryan. I know Veronica Grimm is on there. I know Take the Reins is on the bill. Get Wrecked is on the bill. That'll be at Southgate House. So that'll be a really fun show. And then, yeah, we have our record release show in December, and that is at Blind Bob's in Dayton as well. Another great venue if you're ever there. Yeah, just a fantastic venue. And they've been really supportive of us as well. So we're kind of half Dayton, half Cincinnati. So we've coined the term Dayton-natty.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that kind of closes out the year for us.
How close is, I've been to both, but like I'm actually trying to think of proximity. How close are they together?
About 50 minutes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, that is extremely
So
close.
I live in Cincinnati and we practice in Dayton, and it's 50 minutes for me to commute. So
that's not bad at all.
Yeah, not bad.
Some cities you could drive 50 minutes and still be in the same city. 50 minutes.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Have you started looking and kind of, looking towards ahead? Has the band kind of started thinking about 2025 at all? Have you looked that far ahead yet with the band, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I think we're looking at trying to book like a little micro mini tour in the spring. And that's kind of been our biggest hurdle, is just booking, out of town. Everything is happening way in advance. And just, knowing what is going to be going on in your life in the spring. And again, when you have families and careers and all that stuff. So yeah, just booking shows. We would love to get on some festivals coming up in 2025, if we could. So we're kind of looking at that as well. I think we're looking into like record label distribution support. So maybe, you know, partnering with another label to get some distro on the album. So
very nice, very nice.
Yeah.
Well, where should we where should we send people to find you online, find your music online? You know, where can we find Bandages?
We are on all the streaming, so Apple Music, Spotify, all of that. We're there. And like I said, we do have the video up on YouTube. Our Instagram is bandages_music. So you can check us out there as well. That's where we, you know, put all our shows and post shows. And there's bands out there that want to trade shows. Like we are more than willing to, you know, help out if we can, to jump on some other cities and have some other bands from other cities jump in, you know, Cincinnati or Dayton. So yeah, we'd love that.
Now excited to see what's next, see where you play next. Maybe make your way over here to Western New York.
We will, absolutely.
Have we missed anything as we start to close this out? Is there anything else we should let the good people know, or have we hit everything?
I think so. Just you know, it's been a little wild ride for a year, and please check the album out, check the singles out, and you know, hopefully come see us if we're close or if you're in the area and we're playing here. So yeah, it's been amazing.
Well, no, this was very fun to talk to you. If you're listening to the radio show, we'll play those singles now. We'll play you some Bandages. If you're listening on the podcast, go grab those singles. Go listen to them. But yeah, I'm Anthony Merchant talking to Shannon, vocalist of Ohio punk band Bandages. Got some new music coming for you very soon. And yeah, you're tuned into the Power Chord Hour.